honored and delighted to have you two very important conservationists in the topic that Taiwanese people are not familiar with. So would you please give us a brief introduction of you and your team? Maybe we should start with Carter.
My name is Ivan Carter, and I'm the host of a show called Carter's War. And what we do is we go around Africa identifying issues where the humans and the wildlife are at odds with each other, where they're clashing with each other, where they're fighting with each other. But each episode is designed to educate the audience on what the problem is, the problem from the perspective of the people, the problem from the perspective of the wildlife, and the possible solutions and the people on the front line in charge of those solutions.
Okay, thank you. And Director Wu?
Okay, I'm Joyce Wu, a Senior Program Officer of Traffic East Asia. I'm responsible for the wildlife trade in Taiwan and also the fishery product trade issue for the whole East Asia. We also have the office in Hong Kong, Beijing, and Tokyo. And we work together to deal with any illegal or unsustainable wildlife trade issues.
Okay, thank you too. As I earlier mentioned to Carter, because in Taiwan there's no savanna ecosystem, so a lot of people they are not really familiar with the issue of illegal wildlife poaching or trafficking. So I would like to invite two of you to share with us how you see the issue of illegal wildlife trafficking. What is the complexity of this issue?
Do you want to go first?
I think that, the complexity, if we were having this conversation 30 years ago, when there was a lot less people on the planet, in Africa and the rest of the planet, and a lot more wildlife, it would have been a different conversation. Today we all know that there's too many people on the planet. I say too many, it is what it is, but those people are in competition with the wildlife. A lot of people on the front line in Africa are just trying to feed their families. And so therefore, one of the ways for them to get quick money, and in a lot of cases a lot of money, is the illegal trade of wildlife and wildlife body parts. I think in Asia, unfortunately, there lies a lot of the market for that, in the form of ivory sculptures, in the form of rhino horn, in the form of bones of lions and things of that nature. A lot of the time, the consumer market does not realize the devastating effect on the wildlife in Africa. An effect that has led for 90% of the rhino population being destroyed. An effect that leads to 100 elephants every single day being poached, illegally killed to support the ivory trade. It's starting to get some global awareness, but we have to be careful that we don't wait until it's too late before we act on it.
Yeah, just like Carter has said, including the illegal wildlife trade has involved many different species and different products, and also involved many countries across various borders, and traded in different platforms such as physical market or the e-commerce website or even the social medias. And many people do not really know how they have been hunted and traded to Asia. And also lots of people do not know the trade has been done in very organized and sophisticated way. Yeah.
Yes, and I think it's because a lot of money changes hands.
Yeah.
And any time that there's a commodity that has got huge value, there's going to be people who trade that commodity. And so not all trade in animals is bad, but uncontrolled trade,
right.
Trade which has got no respect for the future of the species, that's the bad trade. Controlled trade within the laws, within very specific quotas, is very, very good for the species. And so I don't want us to misunderstand that trade is bad. The correct trade is very good for wildlife.
Right.
The uncontrolled, unsustainable trade is the trade that is taking the wildlife off the planet today.
Yeah, and also will threaten to human beings also
Yes.
too. Yeah.
Yes, and just like the drug trade, if there's enough money, there's also going to be enough people that will risk everything to get that money.
Yeah.
And so in today's world, as we speak, there's people trying to illegally kill rhinos who know that they're putting their lives at risk to do so. At the same time, on the street in Beijing, tens of thousands of dollars are changing hands because of that trade. And so we cannot make the trade go away. We need to find different ways to protect the species, to make a legitimate trade, and to make a trade that has the future of the wildlife as the primary important factor in the lawmaking.
Right. And people in East Asia, in whole Asia, have to understand that when the species gone, it's not only a threat to the people in Africa, but also will threaten the people in Asia too, because the whole ecosystem destroyed. The climate will change, the whole
Yes.
earth will be destructed. It's not going to be good for people in Asia too. Yeah.
Yes, it's a global issue.
Yes, and it's not an issue about Joyce and Ivan Carter. It's an issue about our children. What do we want our children to have? Do we want them to have a sculpture made from a tusk that was given to them by their grandfather? Or do we want them to have the ability to go to Africa and see a live elephant? Because the way that it goes, we can't have both.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of making sure that the entire community around the globe is educated and informed, and most of all understands that every one of us can have an impact. It doesn't matter who you are.
Okay. So I would like you to share with us what you think is the most difficult part in preventing these illegal things from happening, and what are the latest measures done by the authorities? So maybe from Luis.
Okay. We just talked about the trade, so how complex it is, and it's also done in a very organized and sophisticated way. But on the other hand, many countries do not spend enough resources and do not have very professional officers to deal with these serious issues. And even for some countries, they do have some resources. They do not really see the illegal wildlife trade as a serious crime issues. So that is the real problem. Authorities do not spend enough time and effort to understand the trade, especially for the illegal trade, and how to detect that, how to reverse the whole situation.
Yes, and I think that one of the major challenges that we face is education of everybody. There's certain countries in Africa that have made it legal to shoot a poacher on sight if you're part of a team that's anti-poaching. There's several countries that have done that. At the same time, the vast amount of money that changes hands over the body parts of these animals makes it in a lot of people's minds worth the risk. And so every single trade in the world, if there is a necessity, if there is a need for a particular commodity, there will exist a trade. If we simply outlaw the trade, it just goes underground.
Yes.
And the commodity becomes more valuable. And to be perfectly honest, every time you see ivory being destroyed as a statement against ivory poaching, that's like burning money that you found from a drug dealer, because that very ivory still has value to the end user. If we could find a way to sustainably put that ivory on the market in a controlled and measured way, there would be huge value to the remaining populations of elephant. And I think that what ends up happening is we are not spending enough time looking at those solutions. We're making emotional decisions simply that say this must stop. And we're not involving the local communities and the international communities and the benefit to the local communities within our decision making. So to say to a guy on the ground in Africa, you must stop making money from ivory, without giving him an alternative,
Yes.
all that's going to happen is he's going to find a way of continuing without the authorities' knowledge.
Yeah. And many people in Asia, they also do not have the knowledge about how the wildlife product was being produced.
Yes.
Like when you get ivory, do you need to kill an elephant? Some people even do not have such knowledges, or they do not know what's the impact for killing one or some elephants. What kind of impact people in Africa or species in Africa or people in Asia will have.
Yes, I agree with both of you. So they cannot see the direct consequence of these things, and that's really the challenge of all our environmental educators. And next, we would like to ask a specific question for both of you. So for Carter, we would like to know, because in the show, it's a fascinating show. In the show, we see that you, the crew will follow the rangers. So you actually work with the rangers. So could you elaborate more of this part, how you collaborate with the local rangers of the national parks?
You know, our role is not to be rangers. When we're on the front line with our crew,
yes.
We're not trying to be rangers.
Yes.
What we're trying to do is to tell the ranger story so that our audience, every night at 9 p.m. on Thursdays, they can go and they can see what it's like to be a ranger. They can understand how much risk those people are under. They can understand the life of a ranger. They can understand the passion that those rangers have for the protection of their species. Our goal through the show is threefold. First and foremost, it's got to be entertainment, because if we don't entertain the audience, then they don't listen to the message. Secondly, it's got to be fast and high paced with a lot of good information so that we educate them while they're being entertained. Probably most importantly, and the most important aspect of the whole show, by the end of the show, I want people to understand what it's like to be a ranger, to understand what it's like to be a lion, or to understand what it's like to be the community that is facing the lions. So that collectively, at the end of a show, people can go, wow, I didn't realize that. And so back to your question, we're not trying to be rangers. We're trying to take you, the viewer, on a journey so that you understand the rangers and you can understand these people are the backbone of the solution. They really are. And you take a ranger, you take education, you take alternative lifestyle, and you take the education of the marketplace here in Asia, and then we have a very sustainable solution.
Thank you, Carter. And for Director Wu, okay, so we would like to know what has Traffic Taipei been working on to address this issue in East Asia, and could you please share with us some related upcoming events of Traffic Taipei?
Okay. Traffic Taipei has especially established in Taiwan since 1991. So we work in Taiwan for a long time, and we work with government to strengthen their ability to deal with the illegal wildlife trade issue, such as enhance or strengthen the regulation and increase the capacity of the enforcement officer, including to understand the international regulation and to understand how to identify the species or the product. So when they encounter any shipment, either legal or illegal, at the port, they will be able to understand what is that and what kind of documents should be supplied to verify it is legal or illegal. And we also work with industries such as traditional Chinese medicine industries to let them know the regulation, why we have to stop using like a rhino horn or tiger bone, and to let them know what could be substitute this kind of information. Yeah, and we also work with some public audience, like to let them to understand when they go abroad, what kind of things they can or cannot buy, especially for the wildlife products, this kind of things. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this very informative interview, because National Taiwan Museum, as the first natural history museum in Taiwan, we have this Taiwan Declaration last year in the annual conference of NATIST. The main content of this declaration is that Natural History Museum must be involved in biodiversity conservation. So it is our mission to do that, and we hope that we will have more opportunities to work with you on this issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.